today, and how we're going to be looking at this. We're going to look at AI through the lens of teams. So we're going to give you a little bit of an overview of thoughtfully fit teams if you're new to DLCC. And then we're going to look at AI through the 4 stages of team development of forming, storming, norming, and performing. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Jill Mueller. I am the Vice President of Training and Learning Experiences at Darcy Luoma Coaching Consulting. I am an executive coach. I am a team coach. I do team training and leadership training. We have a focus of creating high-performing people and teams. So if you're wondering, well, Jill, you don't seem like a techie. You're right. I do not have a computer science background. I do not work in IT. I work more in the HR space. My master's is in adult learning and workforce development. But you can see here my Clifton strengths of learner, restorative. I sort of like seeing how different things are trending and seeing how we can create solutions. I like the idea of responsibility and being strategic with what we're doing and having the people part being at the heart of it. If you're familiar with Colby, I'm a 6'4", 8'3". If you're not familiar with Colby, basically what that means, what that 8 means, is I like to brainstorm and play. Sort of before I move into the process. I like to putz around. And so that's where on our team at Darcy Luoma Coaching Consulting, I've been playing around, if you will, a lot with the different AI tools. And have been working with other teams as they are working on the AI tools as well. I want to introduce another person from our team, Amy Mangan Fisher, and you can see her strengths here. She's a learner, so we have that in common. But she also has the intellection, the analytical, the discipline, the achiever. Amy, I'm going to have you come on and share a little bit more what that means for the group.
Hi, everyone. I am all about processes. I like to learn how things work, and I like to ask questions. In terms of AI, while Jill may enjoy the putzing, I like to read about the articles about AI. I want to learn what other people are doing. I want to read about it, and I also want to ask questions about, well, what if? Is that okay? What could happen? So putting everything into processes is kind of my strength.
And as we discuss all the time with teams, the value of teams is when you have the people with the different approaches, the different styles, the different strengths. And as Amy and I will be sharing throughout the webinar here today as well, those different styles, approaches can conflict as well, and in a good way if we let it. So that's what we're going to be looking at here today. I also just want to give you a sense of who's in the room. When you registered here today, we wanted to get a sense of how are you currently using AI tools. So you can see the cross section here of the group. Most of the people who registered for this webinar today are either experimenting with some tools or moving into that regular use of some tools. Have a handful of people who have not used AI at all yet, handful who are integrating into workflows. Wherever you are, we are hoping that you will have some information that you can take back to your teams and that you find this valuable. We wanted to make this applicable to everyone, regardless of where you are right now, both with your current use and how comfortable you are with it. So once again, most of the people here feeling somewhat comfortable, a little hesitant, recognizing a handful of you feeling very comfortable, and a few of you recognizing, okay, the risks are a little bit more of a concern than the benefits at this point. I can say that 9% of you concerned with the risks and the benefits. Amy is there, up, down, and sideways, which is helpful because it's not that I'm not there at all, but Amy will always be the person to be like, what about this? And how about this? And so again, regardless of where you are, part of it is recognizing just that own self-awareness, but it can be helpful to ask this question of your teammates as well if there's an expectation that they're going to be using AI tools. So let's I want to touch just real briefly on the idea of thoughtfully fit teams, because at Darcy Luoma Coaching Consulting, that is what we focus on. We focus on creating high performing people and teams. And at the heart of what we do is we look at teams through these 6 different practices. And you can see the 6 practices on the screen here. What we look at is does the team have trust? Is there accountability? How does the team deal with conflict? Conflict is important. We don't want to eliminate the conflict, but we want to see conflict on the team, but we want to make sure it's a constructive conflict. How's the communication on the team? How's the alignment? And how is the team developing together, not just as individuals, but as a team? And so as we look at this idea of using AI tools, we are really looking at it as a part of the team. And again, as I said, I'm not a huge techie person. I'm interested in software. I'm curious about other websites and, other web tools that are out there, apps on phones. But AI is definitely unique in the sense that it's more than just a technology. If it was just a technology, it wouldn't feel so complicated. There wouldn't be so many questions about it. AI is becoming part of the team. And so we need to recognize that it's not human and it is technology. And we also have to look at how are we integrating it onto the team. Now, you may already be familiar with the 4 stages of team development. I'm going to just go through these briefly in the case this is a new concept. But the 4 stages of team development, this was introduced by Bruce Tuckman back in the 60s. And the idea that he suggested is that every team goes through stages. And while every team goes through the early stages, not all teams make it to the end of this sequence. And so the first team or the first stage that every team goes through is forming. This is when the team comes together, team members come together. Maybe there's cake, right? Like there's fun. Team members are coming together. You think about when there's a new hire, maybe there's donuts in the break room or some sort of special Zoom call. We're coming together as a team. We don't know each other yet, but we're friendly enough, right? We're sort of doing what we need to. We're not quite sure maybe what the team is doing yet, what the goals are, what our roles are on the team, but we're just coming together. Um, and that's usually enough for forming. Everybody goes through forming, and then everybody also goes through storming. And storming is when, if you remember the real world back in the early aughts, like when people stop being nice and start getting real, that's what happens in the storming phase. We are maybe seeing some power trips. There's maybe some confusion. Why did you not come to the meeting with an agenda? Why were you late to the meeting? Why don't you have your camera on? There are all these different storms that can take place in a team. The storming is inevitable. Every team goes through them. We're going to have different sort of disagreements and conflicts because people have different styles. They have different expectations. There's different assumptions that are being made all the time. And the only way teams can get through the storm is by talking about it. And if you've ever been on a team that doesn't want to talk about how the other person is annoying them or how people are frustrated or I think you're doing this wrong and I'm doing this right or vice versa. This is where teams can get stuck. They can get stuck in the storm. But if teams are willing to talk about it, we can facilitate those conversations along the way. They move on to norming. And the norming is just as it sounds. Okay, we all have different assumptions of how a Zoom meeting should be. We're going to create some norms. You got to be on camera. Nobody cares if you're on camera. So the norms might be different. There's no one set of right norms for all teams. But the important part of the process is that the team develops norms for themselves. And only when those norms are established can we move on to performing. Can't tell you how many times I hear from clients of we just want to get to performing. Can we skip the storming part? Can we skip the messy part? And no, I often compare it to baking a cake. That I love cake, but you can't get that cake until you stick it in the oven and it's hot. You can't get that cake until you crack a few eggs and it's messy and there's batter all over the place and you have no idea how this messy soup of a batter is going to turn into cake. It's sort of like the team. I often tell teams that like your cake is baked. We're adding the frosting on right now. Or maybe that cake is not baked yet. And we got to spend a little bit more time in that storm. So those are the four stages of team development. This has been around since the 60s. And the focus for our webinar today is we're going to be looking at this specifically of how do you go through these four stages of team development with AI. So as we go along here today, I invite you to use the chat box. That chat box should be open. And so feel free to send any questions either to the room, or if you have questions that you want to send specifically to me or Amy, you can choose the send it to either me or Amy or the host and panelist. We'll get it that way as well. The other thing that I'll say, since again, I'm in that learner mode, I recognize some of you, all of you, may have tips, tricks, best practices, AI tools that you have learned. Feel free to throw any ideas that are coming along in the chat box. At the end of the webinar, if you don't want to read the chat as you're going along, you can save the chat and read it later. Otherwise, if you're like me and sort of like to multitask along the way, you can see ideas in the chat box as well. So let's start with this first stage of team development, which is forming. And when we're looking at forming with AI, we need to get to know the new hire. And the when we're looking at AI tools, um, if there's one thing you remember from this is get clear on your goal and then choose the AI tool. There are so many AI tools out there that if you find a cool AI tool and then ask the question, well, how could we use this? It is so easy to get flooded. If you start with the idea of what are we trying to do with AI, you will be able to find the tool that matches your goal, no question whatsoever. And so I always encourage people to start with that. What is your goal? And if you're thinking, Jill, like, I don't even know what my goal could be, totally fair. It's all good to, sort of play around and look to see what those tools are. You can truly just Google AI tools for fill in the blank and many things will pop up. So if it's a matter of, I don't even know what's out there, sure, go ahead and play. But when it comes to bringing AI onto a team, get clear on that goal. That's going to set you up for success along the way. So just real briefly, I want to go through the different types of AI tools. And I want to be clear that I did a presentation like this just a couple of months ago. And when I looked back, already there are new tools that are out there just in the last couple of months here. So these tools are always going to be changing, and this is just a fraction of the types of tools that are currently out there. I'm going to go through three different categories of tool. One, the first one in no particular order, are these conversational AI tools. And it's hard to go on a website nowadays where a little chat bot doesn't open up in the corner to say, hey, before you leave, can I help you out? Or do you have any questions? And so this type of AI, this conversational AI, these are the ones that do the chat box, the virtual assistants, either with text or by voice. So just a couple of tools specific for HR. Happy Fox is an AI tool that you can use to create tickets, similar to how somebody might create tickets for IT help request. Happy Fox creates tickets for HR requests and then can automate any part of those tickets along the way. Whisk, as far as I know, is not connected to Wisconsin in any sort of way, but the idea with Whisk is that they actually can create, they create an HR agent. Her name is Harper. And Harper is somebody that you can create this AI bot within your HR function. And then Harper can take care of any HR requests that can be taken care of in an automated sort of way. The examples that they often use is how much sick leave do I have left? Can I take this day off? How do I submit a family medical leave request? Any of those, what can feel like mundane, easy question answers. Harper can take care of you on your team. And I can see, you guys can't see Amy, but I can see Amy's face being like, oh, I would not talk to Harper. I don't know, Amy, if that's what your face is saying or not.
Yeah, pretty close. That's pretty
Yeah.
much what I'm thinking. I would, yeah.
Yeah. And so as we go through these tools, and we're going to be talking about this, these are the tools that are available. You got to figure out what's best for your team. We're not necessarily recommending these tools. We're letting you know what tools are available and out there. HiringAgents.ai, as you might guess, is a bot specific for recruitment. They have both an applicant side and a recruitment, a company side of things for hiring. And then Druid is another type of conversational AI tool specifically for, and they sell themselves on taking care of the busy work tasks, so that HR professionals can focus on the tasks that are most important. Now, these next tools that I'm going to go through, some of them have a conversational or a bot element to it. But this next category of AI is it's called generative AI. This is probably the most common, the most well known at this point. But generative AI is exactly as it says. It is generating new content. It can create copy, pictures, code, really anything. And so the examples of some generative AI tools, so ChatGPT, again, is one of them that's most well known. Perplexity is a tool that's similar to ChatGPT, and in my opinion is better for research. All AI tools, especially the generative, can sometimes make things up, and Perplexity does a much better job, in my opinion, of giving you some real sources if you want to do some research or cite some real sources. ChatGPT can create sources, which you have to tell it not to do it. But the Perplexity creates a little bit more knowledge base there. Microsoft Copilot can really organize everything within your Microsoft suite for you and create email sort of avatars and personas, can take a Word doc and create PowerPoint slides from it, sort of transition things all throughout the Microsoft 365 suites. Dolly creates pictures. I'm just going to give a quick overview. Dolly creates pictures. So any type of pictures you want to create, it will create. Runway creates videos. So you might have already seen, like, there's a whole lot of AI videos out there. So much so my family text chain, we send each other cat videos all the time. And in recent months, it's like, that's not even a real cat. That's an AI video. Like, it's not even real. But it's still funny. And then synesthesia is a training program. So you can actually create, again, there's an avatar that you don't need to have somebody recording your training. You can give it copy and it creates an avatar, and it creates a training videos using that avatar. One thing I just want to mention with generative AI, the better the prompt, the better the results. So if you just say, make me a picture, with the four pillars of the organization, it's going to be a mess. You got the more specific, the more content you can give it, the more you can train it, the better the results will be. So I say that because I remember Darcy one time went on ChatGPT and typed something in. She's like, "This is a mess. This is horrible." And we looked at her prompt, and it wasn't a good prompt. So she sort of wrote it off before truly really playing with it and seeing what it can do. So um, all of these tools take a little bit of time to get comfortable and familiar with. The other category that just real briefly we'll look at here is this idea of predictive AI. And what predictive AI does is it takes the tools, or excuse me, it takes data, trends, anything sort of you give it, and it can predict future outcomes. I was just at the dentist a couple of months ago, and they said, is it okay if we have AI look at your X or an AI tool look at your X-rays? And I was just curious enough. I'm like, sure, yeah, right. And so what this predictive AI at the dentist was basically saying, based on what we're seeing, the prediction is here are where you have some gum issues. So maybe this is now becoming too much information, but it wasn't already there. It's just that based on, other x-rays of other people over time, they pinpointed exactly in between which teeth I need to floss better in. So a lot of things happening in the medical area on that, but specifically in HR, a few tools here. So one model, it is a very robust sort of everything you could possibly look at within HR in terms of engagement, retention, acquisition. They look at all the trends, all the data. Of course, you have to feed in all of the data for them to see it, but then can see different trend lines for your organization. Eightfold is a predictive AI tool for hiring, in the sense that they will take a look at resumes and cover letters and produce recommendations based on the job descriptions you're providing it. Um, so these second two, Lena AI and Lattice, both include a conversational AI element to it in the sense that there are bots and tickets being given or sent in, but then they can take those tickets and create trends of which employee might be disengaging, might be quiet quitting, which employees might be getting close to quitting, in order to deal with retention. So again, that predictive element to it, they're not mind readers. They cannot tell into the future, but they're using data from ever essentially and whatever you provide it to predict those trends on the issues that you're interested in. So we have a question about when testing out an AI tool, is it better to have one person as the lead or roll it out to everyone to learn together? That's an excellent question. And my favorite question, or my favorite response is going to be, it depends. If there is a interest or desire from leadership or from your board or to say, hey, we are doing this, it's important then we're going to talk about the forming part, but to bring the AI tool on board and make sure that training is a part of it, but that we're also asking these questions that we'll be getting into in a moment. So in those cases, having one person take the lead, take that accountability, take that responsibility, saying, hey, we're doing this. That's a situation where having one person taking the lead can be really beneficial. If the team is more in the, hey, I wonder what we could do, I wonder what's out there, in my opinion, when it comes to working on this as a team, this is where getting clear on the goal is important. Um, I have worked with a couple of teams where it's just like, okay, everybody like look for AI tools and see what we can do. And it's really easy to get flooded with all the different possibilities. And then basically at that point, they need to be defining that goal anyways. But there's a difference between saying, okay, as a team, we want to reduce the amount of time that we're spending drafting or creating, compared to we want to reduce the amount of time creating systems or processes, right? Even just those two things narrows your goal to at least know, okay, this is what we plan on doing with that. What we know right now, what the research is showing, a lot of people are experimenting with AI and sort of playing different things with AI, but not necessarily doing this as a team. And some research from Gallup just came out last week saying that the manager's role in leading the team through AI is what's critical. That if the manager is not involved and the manager is not setting expectations, that sort of that continued experimentation and what I'll say that sort of continued just forming and sort of playing around in the storm is happening, but there's not necessarily that evolution to that norming and that performing. So thank you for that question. Certainly, if folks have other questions, please feel free to either add them to the Q&A or add them to the chat box. As we go through this, um, what we're looking at here is what if you treated AI like a new hire? Um, and I mean, they're just so gosh darn cute, right? And the thing to keep in mind is each AI tool is unique. And so that's what makes it complicated because the way people might work with ChatGPT might be very different and would be very different because it's a different goal and it's a different outcome of how people work with Happy Fox or with Whisk. And so when we are looking at AI tools, my invitation to you is to look at them each as unique individuals, even though they're technology, but look at them, and especially as you're bringing them onto the team, in the same way, or at least more similar to how you'd be bringing a person onto the team compared to how you'd be rolling um, technology onto the team. So, in the same way, how do you make sure you're making the right hire? And when we're looking at these questions, this isn't specific to AI in general, but to specific tools. So, how can you make sure you're making the right hire? What specific problem are we hiring this AI tool to solve? If we can't answer that question, just like with a person, if we're like, well, we're going to bring them on because there's somebody's nephew's cousin-in-law, right? That's never a great hire. It's the same way with the AI tools. Um, can we state simply and clearly what's the specific problem? What's the role this AI tool is going to have? Recognizing each AI tool, it's going to be different. Who's their boss? What's the level of oversight and who's responsible for it? If ever, just the same way with a person, if they report to four different people and four different people are telling them what to do, even the AI tool, they need that clear direction, and other people aren't going to know how to work with it, who's in charge. The other thing I love exploring with these AI tools and teams is how will we know if it's being successful? So just like with an employee, we're not expecting a new employee to know everything in 30 days, but there is sort of a rollout process of how many people have they met in 30 days? What are they taking care of on their own? Where are they still working with people in those 30, 60, 90 days? And so those are just the right hire questions. What I would love to hear from you, if you're willing to add to the chat, is when you are introducing new hires to their team, what are your best practices? I'm going to give you a moment. Feel free to add any of your best practices to the chat, and you can share with others. You can either share just with, you can choose everyone or just the hosts and panelists. So go ahead, if you are willing to go ahead and add your best practices for introducing new hires to the team. And we're talking people at this point. So feel free to add to the chat. The other thing I will just say is as we're going through the webinar today, I'm going to be sharing a lot of potential questions that you can ask of your team, discuss with your team as you are bringing on AI tools. We are putting all of this together in a handout for you. You will receive it next week. So certainly feel free to take screenshots or take notes, but we'll also send you a handout next week with all of these questions that we are sharing with you today and more. um, so whatever your best practices are, I'm not seeing any in the chat, and it might, I recognize I don't have all my windows open, but regardless of your best practices, there's an opportunity to apply those best practices into how you roll out AI as well. So chances are when you are introducing new hires, you're explaining why did this person get hired? What are their qualifications? What's the reason that this is the right AI tool for our team right now? How does everyone get to know the AI. So in the same way that you take time for people to get to know um, new hires and new teammates, how is everybody going to get to know it? Is it going to be a formal training process, or is it going to be a casual get together? How is everybody going to make sure that they get to know the AI? And sort of implied with that as well, what's the expectation for every team member to work with the AI tool? Just like with a new hire, not everybody works with each team member in the exact same way. So, as we're forming, can we set those expectations right from the start of um, is everybody expected to work with the AI tool or not? Is there a choice point here or not? And there might be value in having the conversation even before the AI tool is adopted of where people's comfort level are, interest level are. But just like sometimes with new hires as well, people don't always have choices if a new person is going to be hired or not. But you need to have that part of the discussion either before they get hired or right as the team is getting formed. So that's the forming stage. That's where everything is friendly and nice. And from there, we move on to storming. Once again, this is inevitable. And the different types of storms with AI, we can't even predict them all right now. But a couple of examples. One thing with AI, it can create content overload. Whether it is because it's so easy to send out so many emails, right? I mean, as HR professionals, you probably know how many more applications you can receive that may not be quality applicants. Not because of the people attached to it, but just because of the volume of how easy it might be to submit applications now using AI tools. Um, it can also create an overwhelming amount of summaries and analysis and drafts and copy and just all the things. It can create content overload really quickly. When we're looking at AI tools, especially in HR, we can say, oh my gosh, we automated the wrong thing. This was something that maybe a person should have been attached to, or this is not an email that we want to send out an automated response to. One of the things that we're seeing is that the use of the AI recording, even within Zoom, the Zoom note takers reduces engagement in meetings for a couple of reasons. One, when people feel like they're being recorded, I don't want to talk. I don't want my edgy idea or my critical thing that I might say in this meeting to end up, somebody else hearing it. But even when there aren't those sort of psychological safety concerns, why should I attend the meeting when I can just get the AI summary of it later on? And then again, AI can really blur accountability if we're saying, well, the AI tool did it, right? Like accountability can be hard enough within teams, and now we're adding robots to it. So all of these are inevitable storms. And just like storms with people, um, we can't avoid the storm. As much as we might try to prepare for the storm and avoid the storm, we can't avoid the storm, but we can work to prepare to get through the storm. So, for example, with those um, storms that I just went through here, so content overload, can we have a conversation as a team? When is AI creating value? When is it creating clutter? And what can we do to heighten the value and reduce that clutter? When it is automating the wrong things, can we have the conversation of, okay, as we're going along here, okay, we had a misstep here. What are we learning of when we need to look at the context, the tone, the empathy that AI might not get right immediately? Um, when we are looking at engagement in meetings, um, this is actually, sometimes I feel like technology fast forwards things along, and I think this is one of them. People have been assessing their meetings for years, right? And so a lot of the work that we do with teams as they're looking at their meetings is if your meetings are reporting on something going backwards, that meeting probably could have been an email. If your meeting requires people to think and look forward and discuss, that could be a meeting. And so, what's our purpose for meeting in real time? If the purpose for meeting in real time is for all of us to provide summaries, that meeting can probably be an email. And how can we make sure the time that all of us are in the room is actually worth the money in the room? And then looking at accountability, who's ultimately responsible here for what this AI tool produces? Um, if, you know, Sometimes even one of my coworkers on our team said, "Oh, I can't wait until I can just work with with AI and I don't have to do anything." Yeah, we're not quite there with AI yet. They still need coworkers. They still need that accountability. And so while these storms are inevitable, teams need to talk through them. And that's the thing with storming. Whether it is about AI or something else altogether, if you pretend the storm's not there, if you just try to avoid the storm, if you're like, "Oh, I'll just sort of figure out, it'll work out on its own," it doesn't. And that's where teams get stuck in the storm. When teams are willing to talk about those storms and talk about the issues in that storm, that's when they start moving on to norming. And with norming is when we start defining the ground rules together. And so if I go back to the question from earlier, right, if leadership is saying, "Hey, we want to use this tool," leadership can't necessarily also define the norms immediately. They might give some general sort of overview, but the storm is what helps us norm. The storm creates oh, we didn't think of that. Oh, this is what we need to focus on. And then that's what creates the norm. And so to put another way, we can, as we're forming, we can say, okay, this is what we think is going to be a good enough draft, but after we've done it now enough times, what is our standard for good enough if AI drafts something? This is going to depend on the team and depend on the task. There's no one right answer for this. Having the team discuss what helps us feel confident relying on AI's input compared to when do we question it. Every once in a while, we'll use AI to, sort of give us some suggestions or, predict some trends, whatever it might be. And then we get the results and it's like, wait a second, right? Like, and even though it's AI and it's technology and we shouldn't question it, there are times we have to question it. And so that's one of those norms of when are we going to say, okay, this is what AI is saying, we're going to go with it, and when do we question it? Every team that's going to fall on different side of things. How do we communicate if we are using AI internally or externally? I don't know about you, but there's nothing that drives me crazier than I'm on a chat bot on a website and they're pretending it's a real person when you know it is not, right? Like, I don't mind if I'm talking to a chatbot if there's transparency that I am talking to a chatbot. Um, and even internally, we'll share I brainstormed with AI for some of these tools, or I pulled some research from Perplexity. If for nothing else, of like, how did you get this done so quickly? Yep, I used AI to help with drafting with ChatGPT, whatever it might be. And then the other thing with norms is how often are we revisiting our norms to adjust? Okay, that needs to be part of the process because the norms that you have today, they're going to be different 3 months from now, not only for different tools, but just because things change along the way. I wanted to just share, and the document that we'll send you next week has a few other examples, but here are just some example norms that we have for DLCC specifically for ChatGPT. So for us, we use ChatGPT to draft, not for final drafts. So it's always, all of us on the team have an easier time responding to something than starting from a blank white page. So we use it to draft. We use ChatGPT as a collaborator, not as an authority. ChatGPT does not know best. You know, maybe 10 years from now, the robots will take over, but we're not here yet. So at this point, we are still using it, and for the foreseeable future, we'll use it as a collaborator. Um, we still flag each other if drafts sound too much like AI. And this has popped up a few times where Amy has told me that that sounds like AI, and I'm like, but I wrote it, right? But it can still, like, even if a person wrote it, if it sounds like AI, we let each other know because we don't want that out there. Even, right? It's not, for me to say, well, I wrote it. It doesn't matter if it still sounds like AI. We share with each other when we learn something new, if there's new prompts that were helpful or something that's helpful. And then the other thing, just for us, for the privacy part of it, is we never share client names in ChatGPT. It's just a line that we have drawn. And one thing I should say, so with different AI tools, there's different levels of privacy and security with that data. Typically, if you are paying for something, you're going to get more privacy and security with that tool. That said, and I think Amy, Darcy, and I are all just sort of a little bit skeptical enough that we don't take any chances when it comes to client data and confidentiality. And so that's just a line that is a very firm line for us. So I share these norms not because these are the correct norms, but just because this is what we landed on over time. And this list has, right, so while the client names part that has always been on the list, other things we have added over time as we have worked more with ChatGPT. Obviously, different tools have different norms then as well. So the final stage of team development then with AI is performing. Again, it would be nice if we could just skip to that part, but you got to work through each of those phases first. And so, how can you recognize success when AI feels baked in, not slapped on? So, if it feels like just a tack on, just like with any other type of software or even team member, if it doesn't feel integrated, chances are you're not performing yet. In the same way, when team members sort of have that standard, we can review, we can refine, we can share what's working because we have agreed, we have norms on what our standards are. We know what working well together looks like. And ultimately, I think the goal for AI should still be supporting team strengths and not replacing team strengths. We're not at a place yet where AI can do everything. I know that might be a hot take. I know other people might have other opinions on that. But I think, especially in industries where we are working with people, and HR is certainly one of them, um, AI can't do the human stuff the way that HR professionals and team leaders can do. So that is the idea of onboarding AI to your teams. Once again, we'll be sending a handout out next week that includes all of the content that you saw on the slides here, plus a little bit more. We have some time left for your questions. And I know some questions have been coming in. I'm seeing some questions, so I will respond to those as well. But we want to make sure that you are sending in your questions here as well. So don't hesitate to add those to the chat box or the Q&A. And I'm going to turn it over to Amy for a moment.
Thanks, Jill. Um, so, what's next? That was a lot to think about. And I want to hold on one second. You may have more questions now than when we started, and that's okay. That's a good thing. You may not have thought about AI as a team member, and now you're trying to kind of think through how do we integrate that. We would love to be a sounding board as you think through about what's next for your team, whether that's integrating AI, tackling goals, trying to modify how you're doing it right now. So in order to help you take the next step, we are offering a limited number of 20-minute consults with Jill. This is a chance to dig into anything from today's conversation, from integrating AI helping your team adapt to AI, introducing AI in the very beginning, or to working through any storms you're facing, whether that is with AI or not. So onboarding and those storms. Again, whether the storms are with AI or just with all the humans. Jill has put a chat in the chat. She's put the link. When you schedule that 20-minute consult with Jill, you will receive another bonus resource, and that is the top mistakes to avoid when introducing AI to your team. So I think that is it.
Yeah.
I'm going to pass it back to Jill for the questions.
Awesome. Thanks, Amy. So I see first question here that I'm seeing, are there specific things that should be included in an AI policy? And I will say that is beyond the scope of my knowledge base. But I can also tell you there are plenty of folks out there who are willing to help with that. And specifically, so Lattice AI, one of the tools that we talked about earlier, provides assistance for HR resources or HR professionals specific about this idea of governance. But in general, the things for an AI policy, I always sort of look at it sort of starting internally and then moving to externally. So looking internally, looking at employees, what is acceptable for them to use AI? Is it okay for them to use ChatGPT or not? Is it okay to use any AI tools as a part of work or not? And it's not so much like, okay, you have to, but the policy, if you need a policy saying you will not be using AI tools at work, that's within your power, power to do so. So just sort of like what is acceptable AI use within the company. So if the question is, or if the answer to that is yes, we are okay using AI, then sort of the question that comes of ethical obligations, legal obligation, confidential obligations, is it, recognizing client data, the security data. Every AI tool is going to let you know to what degree your data is being used. And so if, perhaps by tool, your policy says these are the AI tools that we can use depending on this level of security that they have. Then to go out, a little bit further, if you're using it externally, then if you are using a chatbot, being clear on how is that information saved and stored? Where does it live? Who has access to it? What efforts are you doing to protect that information that people are sharing? So there's both sort of the data privacy of so if somebody is sharing their name and email address, does everybody in your organization get their name and email address? Is it only here? Might that be used elsewhere then as well? And then the security part of it. So it's privacy within the organization and then just overall security. What are you doing to keep your system secure? So there's a lot of different pieces, and I'm sure I'm only scratching the surface of that. But those are the types of things that, again, depending on what your goal is and where you're starting, is a place to start. Next question. Love this question here. What about the notion of credit for work done? Some people may be less reticent to take credit for what the AI tools have actually produced. This is another great example of where teams can storm with this. That if I say AI helped me come up with these ideas, some people on the team are going to be like, well, she took the easy way out. And some people on the team are going to be like, well, good for her for using different resources. And there could be everything in between. And so that feels like a question to discuss with your team. Are we using, what are sort of the current mindsets of this? Is it seen as taking the easy way out? Is it being seen as being more productive? Is it being seen as being, more effective? And maybe it's not even a question of more or less as much as what resources do we want to use? Amy's a former math, I say former math teacher. She'll always be a math teacher, but she used to teach math every day. Um, and I remember when we first started using this, I compared it to a calculator in the sense that when it comes to drafting and to writing, ChatGPT is kind of like a calculator. And again, people, it's not a calculator because, there's one right or wrong answer when you're typing numbers in compared to when you're drafting something. There's so many different ways that it can go. And how I see ChatGPT, it's just a good place to start. I can say I want to write an article on this, like give me a draft, and then, 9 times out of 10, it's not good, right? Because it's not a human that wrote it yet. So I need to keep working on it. Um, but it's at least a draft. And in the same way with a calculator, if I type in 2 times 6 and get 8, right? It requires some thinking to say, oh, I typed something in there wrong. And I think that's the other important thing about a lot of these AI tools is just because we type something in doesn't mean the output on the other end of it's going to be perfect and ready to go. Um, so I know I'm sort of taking a long-winded road to your answer here for this question, but that really is a great example of a question to discuss with your team of how are we going to see the work that AI does.
Yeah, Jill, when I read that, I read it as um, more so, I guess, the opposite of are people going to take credit for things that
Mm.
AI did and then say, "Oh yeah, I didn't use AI. I'm just like that smart, or I'm just amazing." So acknowledge, depending on you, obviously are very transparent with, "Yep, I used AI to get me started." Maybe not everyone is as transparent, and I'm not sure the way that that question was framed, but it works both directions.
Absolutely. It's such a great point, Amy. And that, recognizing within the team, either is there an expectation or not an expectation. That's one of the trends that Gallup has also identified in of less like using AI in secret. Because nobody has quite said if it's okay if I use it or not, right? Like there's um, value in just sort of bringing it to light as what if the expectation is we are not using ChatGPT or we are not using any AI tools for anything, let's have that conversation instead of like sort of trying to keep it hidden and in the dark. I'm seeing a couple other questions. So I think the essence of this one was what if someone just doesn't want to use an AI tool? Um, and I mean that's swap AI tool with use Zoom or come back to the office or work with fill in the blank, right? Um, and so couple of things here. When we see a question like this, it's like, okay, is this a technology issue? Is this um, Amy and I sometimes laugh because we're getting to the age of like, I don't want to learn the new technology. We used to be like the young buckaroos who'd be like happy to learn any new technology. And then now it's like, "Oh, I don't want to learn a new one." And so if it is truly just that sort of surface level issue, right, of I don't know what's happening, I just don't want to use it, that's a different conversation compared to I don't want to use an AI tool because I'm concerned it's going to replace me. Or I don't want to train AI to do my job because then what am I going to do? I like doing the busy work. It's not busy work. Every request has a person attached to it. Um, and so when I see questions like that of what if somebody just doesn't want to, there's more there. And in my opinion, you never get very far by just telling them that they have to, or like saying, or even like with good intentions, oh, it's not that big of a deal. It's just fine. It's not a problem. Um, and instead, right, get curious. There might be a place where you need to say, okay, so this AI tool will be a part of our team moving forward. This AI tool is something that we need to be using. What do you need to get on board? Um, and right, if there is I just saw another question pop in. How do we communicate with folks who have ethical concerns over AI? This is a place, right? Okay, does this become a no-go? In one way or the other. And so what I mean by that is if an employee has, this is my cat Scooter, everyone, if people have an ethical obligation of like, I cannot support something that, is having an impact on the environment, I am concerned about the privacy issue, right? Like those issues may not be resolvable. And so instead of trying to convince them otherwise, or right, it is that then okay, just like, okay, I have a real hard time doing public speaking. I cannot do this part. Is that okay as a part of their role or not? Right. And so if things are shifting where, okay, the expectation is that we are going to be using this chatbot moving forward, then that becomes a bigger question of just what I'll call the surface issue of, I just don't want to use this AI tool. It becomes a bigger conversation, and this isn't necessarily new. I've worked with a number of leaders who are really hesitant to sort of have those, okay, are we at an impasse deal breaker conversations? And it sort of just lingers under the surface. And again, that's a choice that every team has to make. I'm going to take one more quick question. I will stick around after noon, but I just want to make sure that we respect your time as well. But how formal do norms have to be? And I will just tell you, they do not have to be super, super formal. They don't have to be written in parchment. They don't have to, be like passed and but I do encourage to have them written down somewhere, even if they live in a Slack channel or somewhere on a shared drive, just or in an email that you send out that you can revisit, just so that it is there. Um, that takes us to noon, folks. I want to thank you for joining us here today. If you have other questions, please don't hesitate to email us. We will see you next time. See you next time. Take care, folks.